left, right.
Over the last couple of decades, therapy has grown in popularity. Once something that was taboo to talk about in public is now public conversation. People are sharing publicly that they are in therapy. They're not just sharing the fact that they're in therapy, they're sharing the conversations that they're having in therapy. However, this conversation we're having tonight is going to be a case against therapy. Is all therapy good? Or is there some therapy that just may not be good at all? A self-serving, business perpetuating type of therapy? Well, we'll get there. I hope you listen on. If you have not already subscribed to this podcast, it allows us to get a real feel for how many people watch this show. And you know what? We appreciate if you subscribe and don't watch. It still makes us feel good. So if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and following this podcast, I would be greatly appreciative. Thank you, and see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Process go.
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. That means I can finally take a sip of this drink. My name is Justin DiGiulio, joined by James, the Bosinator Boswell, philosopher, philanderer, philanthropist, philatelist. He is a man of many PHs, and this is SipTalk, episode 228. Today we are discussing therapy and potentially a case against therapy. James, how are things hanging down there in sunny South Carolina?
Well, things are fine down here. Been rainy. But October's a great month in South Carolina because it's no longer balls hot outside every day.
I completely agree. October is a nice month up here in New York and New Jersey because it's also not crazy hot and it's not cold enough that you got to wear winter jackets and things. So I wore a jacket yesterday. I haven't worn, I wore like 2 weeks so far this year. So it's nice to be able to wear a lightweight jacket. Question for you. I don't know if you get this down there, but we've had a lot of bees coming into the house, like by
No?
the dozens. So the only thing I can think of is the bees are kind of finding some way into the house. They're burrowing holes, these perfect circles, about the size of a little smaller than the size of a dime, and I don't know if they're nesting
Into the wood?
into the wood. Yeah,
Yeah, that's not good.
There's 201. I've heard it referred to as carpenter bees and some other type of bees. It's really a wild phenomenon, and I've never seen bees come from the outside into the inside. We haven't had a lot of bees nests around the house.
Well, and I would imagine you don't really want dime-sized holes all over your siding.
No, I went and I filled a bunch of them with caulk, and then smoothed it over. I figured caulk was kind of rubbery, and they're not gonna get through that. In other news. So I just figured I'd share on the topic of October. I thought I'd share the bees thing with you. I don't know.
Because that's what everybody thinks about in October. Is you know what? October, that's the bees month.
I don't know if it's going to happen again. I've only been in New Jersey for a couple of years. So it's the first time this happened. Being a homeowner and things like that. But speaking of the homeowner situation and being this is SipTalk, I'm building this bar in the basement. You came over, you saw the bar. I was waiting for the top. So I finally decided I'm going to build the top out of wood, give this nice old Irish bar type finish where you can just put your glass right on it, slam it down. It's not going to crack like it was going to be marble. And I got a tap for the top of the bar. So I drilled the holes in the bar. I've got a couple of refrigerators underneath the bar. I was going to turn one of these refrigerators into a refrigerator for a keg, which I'm not mounting the draft to the top of the refrigerator, but I am drilling holes through the.
So you're gonna have to run lines.
I had to run lines. So I looked at the refrigerator, I pulled it out, and trying to figure out the best place to drill some holes in the refrigerator, I decided I'd go through the side of the refrigerator. All right, seems like a safe place. I'm not going through the back end of the refrigerator. The side seems pretty good. So I had a drill bit, and I went through, it was about an inch drill bit, went through perfect. I said, oh, this is great. I went to feed one of the lines through. It just barely didn't fit. So I said, you know what? Let me drill one more hole side by side. I'll feed both of the lines through here. And the second that drill bit pierced the side of the refrigerator, I just heard psst, and I must have hit a coolant line. And all this pressurized freon started, which apparently is toxic and flammable. So
Is it also inflammable?
I don't believe it's inflammable, but it may be. Who knows?
If it's flammable, then it's inflammable.
I didn't try to light it on fire. So
maybe you should have looked at like some diagnostics or some specs to figure out where to drill this hole.
yeah, well, I ended up having to buy another refrigerator. I reached out to the manufacturer, asking them about the specs and what I said. I understand I'm going to be voiding the warranty. I'm not looking for any direction there. I just want to know kind of where the lines are, where the electrical is for the interior light, so I don't drill through that stuff. But look, that's enough about me. I feel like you've been really quiet, James. You haven't been doing a lot of talking. Is there anything you'd like to share?
I mean, I've got a rant that I could go on, but it's really niche.
Is it something that's been getting to you lately? Is it something you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're just going to segue straight into the. You know what? Here's what I will say.
I was trying to segue.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like, one of my struggles in life has been with the notion of stubbornness.
Okay.
Where, like, I think you would acknowledge this because most people do. I'm one of the most stubborn people I've ever met.
Okay. Now, would you consider that a positive quality?
Well,
Actually, let me hold the conversation like a therapist. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think by definition, if you're a stubborn person, you have to view it as a positive quality. Stubbornly.
All right. Tell me more about that.
Well, I'm not going to. It's like.
So I see you're holding your ground. Why is that?
Well, did I tell you that I'm stubborn?
So there are some people that are just not susceptible to therapy, by the way. This is one of my biggest qualms with therapy is there are a lot of really bad therapists out there that I just feel like are just kind of milking a paycheck and not interested in really helping people. And they may have their own theories about how they are helping those people, but there's different types of therapy. Also, we're not going to get.
Well, you know what? Here's one of the reasons why I don't respect therapy. Now, this is like, now, I'll preface this by saying, like, if you out there listening find value in therapy, that's all good. This is a personal vendetta of mine. I'm not trying to tell people not to go to therapy if it's right for you. However,
so this episode may piss you off, especially if you love therapy. That's our disclaimer. As James and I understand most episodes, we come with a certain bias because of our backgrounds. And you if you're listening to this podcast,
this is going to be about as biased as I get here.
Well, look, everybody missed the episode about the writers and actors strike because we didn't do it. So this is what we
missed it too.
We missed it too. So now you're here. Now you're listening to our thoughts on therapy, and I think I don't think either one of us is bashing therapy for certain people.
Also, I'm about to bash therapy in general.
And also, if you feel that you need therapy, there's a problem. If you feel that you need therapy, then you probably do.
Yeah, like, go ahead and go to therapy. This is not SipTalk telling you not to, despite what I'm about to say.
We are going to share our beliefs around therapy. So, go ahead.
So, item number 1 is, and maybe this is just the way it's depicted in media, but, like, it feels really lazy because all you have is, like, a nicely furnished office with comfortable furniture, and you sit there and you just say, well, how did that make you feel? And then you wait 2 or 3 minutes, and then you listen to what they have to say, find 1 or 2 sentences, isolate them, and say, well, how did that make you feel? And you repeat this for an hour, and you get paid like $200.
Well, that is the weakest element of therapy, and again, that's a whole sect of therapy, letting the own person, one's own self, kind of solve their own problems by self-analyzing. You're just kind of giving them this guided self-analysis, but you are not able to say, you know what, that is a problem. Thank you for sharing the information. Here's what I think you should do. Right? You're not giving that person any actual direction. You're letting them figure it out and trying not to bias them in any way.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, and apparently this is kind of like a big difference between men and women in general. Is like I had a roommate a couple years ago, and he would come home from work and he would talk about something that happened at work that he didn't like, and sometimes he would talk about the same thing like 2 or 3 days in a row or whatever.
So
And
you were his therapist.
in a way, yes. But he would talk about whatever was bothering him, and I was just like, dude, you need to stop complaining about this. Either do something about it or shut up. Like, for me, anytime someone expresses a problem that they're going through, my mind is always racing through potential solutions. And, as they talk more, that list gets narrower because I have more information. But anytime someone talks about like a negative experience, my mind immediately goes to, okay, what can be done about it? Like,
So
I don't,
rather than
I don't really care how you feel. I say, like, how about we come up with something that you can do so you don't have to feel this way? And like, we don't have to care about how you feel because it no longer exists.
Rather than talk about your problem and about how you feel about your problem, let's talk about solving your problem and potential solutions. However, and I suppose this may work against you if you are a therapist, that you're creating a shorter therapy journey for that person. And when your income is based off of billable hours, there are fewer billable hours.
Yeah, I mean, you can think about it like this: like, the world's best therapist would go out of business very quickly.
Exactly. If your goal is to help people solve their problems, then if you're good at it, it's like a mechanic. If you can fix a problem really quick, then you're not. If you're getting paid by the hour, then you're not doing yourself much good.
Yeah, like if you think about the idealized therapist, every person that walks into their office comes out with their problem solved, they'd be broke.
So let me ask you this: where do you get a lot of notes here? Let me ask you this: where do you want to go from here? Should we talk about types of therapy, or you want to talk about your thoughts on why women are more likely to use therapy and benefit from therapy?
And so, I mean, I kind of want to, selfishly, I want to talk about my stuff because
So
I
this
think
is
there's
your own
opinions
therapy.
and
This
there's
is your own
opinions
therapy.
and stuff that like we can argue about, or maybe like our viewer could argue with us about, because like just talking about the different types of therapy, I think might be a little dry. Whereas this is going to be a topic of debate.
Well, this episode 228, is going to be the introductory episode to our bar trivia. I've got a good trivia question. So if we get too dry about halfway through the episode, I am going to drop a trivia question. So don't let me forget. This is my reminder to remind you to remind me, so I'll remember.
Okay, and remind me of something at the end of the episode that goes along with the bar trivia.
If I remember, I'll remind you. Otherwise, just remind me and I'll let you know.
Good.
All right, cool.
So a lot of this is inspired by a video I saw on YouTube by a clinical psychiatrist, and the video's title is "Why Therapy Sucks for Men."
Okay. Do you want to shout out the clinical psychologist's name?
I don't remember it.
Lost it. All right. Well,
I mean, I can find it, but
all right. So, why does therapy suck for men?
well, I'm not. I mean, I'm gonna immediately go out of order from my notes, but like the probably the biggest one is that men are just socialized to not talk about their feelings.
You and I have some different beliefs on this because I believe that a man should be stoic and he should hide his feelings and he shouldn't publicly display his feelings, and that crying isn't a very masculine thing to do, and that there are aspects of stoicism that would carry over to this, that you wouldn't be wanting to express your emotions outwardly, and be seeking help.
So you know what's funny is, while I would probably say like the viewpoint that you just expressed, that things shouldn't be that way, if you look at the way I actually live my life, it actually lines up very closely to what you're.
Yeah, even though you would argue my point, you do kind of live more the stoic. You don't go out in the soccer field and the other point, the other team wins and you're crying at the end because you tried really hard that season. That's not you.
Yeah,
But again, men. But you're right. Men are not, and I believe this is a good thing. Many people, especially women, but not, but I'd say maybe only 40% of men. Uh, but a lot of women think that it's good for men to be in touch with their emotions and just expressing their emotions. When I don't think that's a good thing. I was literally just listening to a podcast on my drive home about how basically being polite and being straightforward. And some people believe that it is polite to be straightforward, um, and
that
that
is so regional.
it is regional. Because if you look at like Europe, for example, you would be reserved if you didn't like someone's cooking. You wouldn't say, "Oh no, thanks. I really don't like
I
this."
just think about the South versus New York City.
Well, in what sense that people in New York are much more forward
That
and
what
truthful?
comes off as rude in the South is damn near polite in New York City.
And that's
Like,
so. But the southern side would be the more reserved
yes,
and the less honest. And
arguably.
I was thinking, uh, but it's almost deceiving, and that's where it flipped. The
Let me
podcast I
tell
was
this story.
listening, hang on, the podcast I was listening to was just saying that something flipped where we now looked at people being reserved and polite as they're thinking one thing but acting another way, and that's deceptive.
Right, and so a couple years ago, I was up in New York City visiting you, and we are up at a bar in Harlem, and like you were off doing your own thing. I went and sat down next to a chick at the bar, and I started talking to her. And like 90 seconds in, she says, "I'm not really sure what you're looking for tonight, but it's not gonna happen." And I was like, "Great, awesome!"
But
Like,
the way that your brain works, you were a happy guy because you're like, all right, you didn't lead me on.
right?
She
I was
lead
like,
me on for
"You
90
just saved me
minutes.
20 minutes and $20 at the minimum." Like, I like, there's
She,
lots of other people that I could talk to in this bar. Like,
yeah,
you're now eliminated. That's cool. Whereas, like in the South, like people are too polite to say that. So you could be talking up like this chick, and she's not interested in you at all, but she's gonna keep on talking to you and keep on being polite because it's rude to say something like that to somebody in the South. Whereas in New York City, that's just how they operate. It was great.
uh, but I think it's great also, and I like that New York aspect. However, I do believe in being reserved oftentimes and not just being straightforward with how I think or how I feel, and
Like,
that may also change after a few drinks.
all right.
But
So what's your take on that short story?
I think it was great, and I think but that would be on the more masculine side of of that equation if we want to assign a gender role for that situation, which we literally just did a podcast episode about this.
Oh yeah.
But I think most people would argue that men are socialized not to talk so much about their feelings. There's just a comment here on TikTok that says, "I'm gay and I don't show my feelings. Not masculine." You're right, and I assume he's a more masculine gay man. I think that there's a word for that probably, but I don't know all these things. Um,
Well,
but I think that we've been pushing men for the last 15 years to be more in touch with their feelings. You know, and it's one thing, for like a newscaster, I think to his voice to crack a little bit when when talking about like a school shooting or something, which nobody's voice is cracking about at all anymore. It's just regular case. But 20 years ago for news reporter to be covering it and get a little caught up. But now I feel like that it's almost expected that they want a man to be weeping almost. I feel like
And I think that's going a little far.
I don't know. It's very strange to me. But women traditionally are more in touch with their feelings, and having a conversation about your feelings that you are paying to do so, to me, would trend more feminine. And your stats here are roughly 60 to 70% of therapy patients are women.
And also, it's almost the exact same ratio of therapists. That it's about 2/3 of therapy patients are women, and about 2/3 of therapists are
Okay.
also women. I want to hit this comment real quick.
Yeah.
Sasha says men are killing themselves at way higher rates than women. So if y'all are not going to do therapy, at least talk more with close friends and family. So there's an interesting thing about like suicide statistics is that women are more likely to attempt suicide. Men are more likely to like successfully execute the suicide. Like women have more failed suicide attempts than men.
Yeah. But so again, we're breaking down statistics by men and women. But if you think about, and they've done studies, I think somewhere near like Sweden or Finland or something, they've looked at the stats of the number of men or women that go into healthcare, the number of men or women that go into construction, and men will trend towards construction and maths and sciences, and women tend to go more towards nursing, and particularly this field, which you just said, 2/3 of the customers, the patients, are women, and 2/3 of the providers are women, which to me.
So I want to actually, since we're talking about this, I want to talk. I want to talk a little bit about another reason why men don't want to go to therapy, and this is which is even with 1/3 of the profession being made up of men, like you've got an industry that in a lot of ways in its modern iteration is kind of created by and designed for women. So men feel like going to therapy is automatically going into a female space.
Well, if we have socialized men to not be in touch with their emotions, and women are in touch with their emotions, they are effectively going into a dangerous place for them.
They're going into a dangerous place where they don't have the tools to navigate. And it's also like you might also ask, is expressing emotion as valuable to men as it is to women? And maybe the way that maybe the type of therapy that works for women won't work for men.
It's women. In the video that you're talking about, which I listened to the other night, he talked about how it's so difficult for men even to give compliments to their friends.
Which is true.
And I was thinking about it. I don't remember if we talked about this in the last episode or not, or if we talked about it off air. But we have a mutual friend, and him and I ran into someone that we used to know, and she, by different metrics, wasn't doing, in my opinion, as well as he was. And I'm sure on some metrics that I don't know about, she may be doing better. But I wanted to give him a compliment afterwards and say, hey, man, this is somebody you used to know. And I just want to say, man, I'm really proud of you where you are in life. It gave me that interaction gave me some perspective. And I want to say, hey, just call it out, let you know you're doing pretty good. And I'm proud of you. I struggled with that for a week, how to find an opportunity to say it. And then I tried to say it and it just came out fucking wrong.
Yep.
It was really weird.
Whereas women say that shit to each other all the time.
But
we're just not equipped with that language on call. So, being somebody who does sales training in my office, I send a text message out because communication for me is very important. I sent a text message out. I played with the words a little bit, and I explained in the message something along the lines of, I'm teaching you these sales tactics. It's not important that you know them and that they're in your brain so that you're aware of them, but you need to know them, and it has to be front of mind. So even though you went to this class, the sales class I'm about to give last month, it's a really good idea to also come back this month, because it will be reinforced when you're learning these sales tactics. So when that scenario arises, it's more likely to be in the front of your mind, so you can just say those words. Now, men, when it comes to conversation around emotions, they don't have the language verbalized in the front of their brain. It's just feelings, and it's very difficult oftentimes to articulate a feeling.
I'd say the only area that men are really good at complimenting each other on is like tangible accomplishments. And I'll give an easy example. Like, I play in this pool league, and if one of my teammates plays a good match and wins, I can say, "Hey man, you played really well that game, good win." That's easy to say.
Fair enough, but that is
And anything along the lines of that. Someone got a promotion, congrats on the new job. It's something like that. That's easy to say.
Let me ask you about this, because we're talking about statistics, and I deal with this a reasonable amount as a real estate agent. Number of men versus number of women who have therapy pets, or not pets, therapy animals, emotional support animals. What would you think that would be?
Do you have the number?
I have my experience.
Do you have a number to put to it?
I don't have a number, but I can tell you from having been doing this for well over a decade that I can't think.
My bet is that the ratio is probably 3 or 4 to 1.
I can't think of a male client that had an emotional support animal. I can think of even I had a male client with an animal, and he was moving in with his girlfriend, and then I was like, "Oh, it's not going to be allowed unless it's an emotional support animal." And he said, "Oh, actually, it's my girlfriend's, and it's her emotional support animal. Here's the paperwork." So,
it's also like, I think even if the pet is an emotional support animal for a man, no man's going to say that.
Well, I have very mixed feel, and I'll get slaughtered for this because I probably shouldn't even say it on air. But I have mixed feelings on emotional support animals, because my question is, emotional support animals are relatively new.
Yep.
So
it's different than like a service dog that's trained to perform a task for someone who has a disability.
Yes, emotional support is you get nervous on planes, so you fly with your pet, with your dog. But it's more likely a pet. It's more a pet in the sense of pet is in the sense that it's not a trained animal.
Right. An emotional support animal isn't trained to do something. Like, a true service animal does things for its owner that actually help.
Yeah, it makes sense when you're about to have not a stroke, but a seizure, or is able to help you put your shoes on, or help you feed yourself, and
all sorts of things, like
or navigate for blind people. But here's my question: what were people doing 20 years ago before these emotional support animals became? And I'm not attacking them. I wouldn't get an emotional support animal because it would just, to me, seem like more work, and I don't need that distraction. But what were people doing before emotional support animals?
Xanax.
Do you think at the rate that they're using emotional support animals now?
No, they're still using Xanax pretty hard too.
But let me just backtrack a little bit. All I'm really saying is that emotional support animals, to my experience, not service animals, but emotional support animals, have trended towards more women.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And
I wonder if emotional support animals are more prescribed or more requested. I mean, I could almost guarantee.
I don't think they're prescribed. You can have like a service animal prescribed,
Sure.
But emotional support animals, there's not like a medical thing about them. That's just like, maybe maybe a therapist would recommend it, but like in terms of an actual medical recommendation,
an example, like Adderall. I imagine probably 50% of people who are on Adderall go in requesting, I want Adderall. Whereas the other 50% are like, hey, I can't focus. My job's, I can't study. They're like, we're going to prescribe you something. And they prescribe Adderall, right? Like that would be my guess, roughly 50-50. I
have no idea.
I don't know either, but I just imagine emotional support would be kind of like marijuana. People who have legal marijuana card, I would imagine the majority of them are going to a doctor. I mean, there's a lot of like sales funnels for marijuana retailers that are like, here's our doctor, and just talk.
Oh yeah,
which is awesome. Just the way.
Well, it's
I mean, not awesome like
loophole to a stupid system. Right?
It's an awesome loophole in the sense awesome like it's just kind of jaw dropping that like we just have this gaping loophole, and not that it's that bad of a thing. It's a funny thing to me.
All right, so Sasha says it's a scam for entitled assholes who want to bring their pet pigs and peacocks on vacation, and to a large degree, I agree.
Well, the pet pig and the pet peacock, yeah, it is.
I heard about this. It's emotional support animals are a nightmare for airlines to deal with, and I heard a story because first of all they can be practically any animal, and so someone talked about how someone had an emotional support tarantula on an airplane, and I'm just like, I'm phobic of spiders. Like I'm not getting on that airplane.
That would do more trauma to the other passengers of the airplane.
Yeah, and
that's like some Marilyn Manson shit.
That situation of me being seated next to somebody who has a tarantula hasn't happened, but there was one time that I was the second to last person to get on a plane, and there were two seats. There was one that was the absolute front row, and there was this lady that had a dog with her, and I was like, I'm not sitting next to a dog. I don't I didn't book a ticket to with a passenger as a dog and next to me. I'm not doing that. Well, your only other seat is in the absolute last row next to the bathroom. I said, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I don't want to because it wasn't wearing the service dog vest. It wasn't a service dog. It was a pet.
So why have we seen such an uprise? Again, it's really important that I preface this point with I'm not. The title of this episode is a case against therapy? ? Okay, not a case against therapy. A case against therapy ?
I'm adding the exclamation point.
Why is it that we've seen such an uprise in therapy, such an uprise in therapy and emotional support animals, such an uprise in we want you to be open about your emotions. We want this public conversation about emotions. Women are looking for men that are in touch with their emotions, even though I definitely don't think that's a turn on. I think that's like this fairy tale thing where every girl wants a nice guy, but when they meet a nice guy, they just kind of walk over them.
He's boring.
Yeah, put them in the friend zone, whereas really they end up being, despite what they tell you, end up being attracted to the asshole.
Yeah, that's a paradox that we still haven't resolved.
But why are we? But here, if we saw a sudden trend in uprise in women being attracted to soft body men who are really, really nice and get walked all over, I haven't seen it happen yet. I mean, I have seen.
Let me respond to your first question of why are we seeing?
I have seen women attracted to less masculine men lately. Where you see,
but that's different. That's just physical appearance.
Men wearing bracelets, men with ponytails, things like that. I've seen.
I don't get the ponytail thing, but
I've seen an uprise in that. But I haven't. But a lot of those guys I also think are assholes. So, but I haven't seen that swing yet. But I've seen that women say they want these more emotional, available men. And again, we're speaking as straight people because I don't have that background in the homosexual or non-binary relationship. I don't know that.
I mean, so why are we seeing a bigger push for therapy right now? Well, I think to varying degrees, depends on what study. The trend's always positive. It's just how positive is it? Is you look at the incidence rates of various mental health disorders, and over the last 20 years, they've gone way up. And like
Well,
one person asked, this is a post on Reddit from a long time ago asking like, and it's basically targeted to our generation, people almost exactly our age, of saying like, why do you guys have like so much anxiety and depression? And the answer was like, when I was 15 years old, I watched 3,000 people die on live television, and the world hasn't gotten any better since.
that's where I was going to go. Is that in our news cycle, we're seeing a lot more fear mongering. We're seeing a lot more sensationalized incidents, and we're also just seeing a hell of a lot more. Right?
Well,
We're seeing visually a lot more shit that's going on. We're seeing every single day stores being robbed, people being mugged at gunpoint. You didn't used to see that because not everybody had a phone out, not everybody had a Ring doorbell cam, not every store had closed circuit television.
right.
That wasn't that, and CCTV isn't even CCTV anymore. Now it's just kind of open
Yeah.
broadcast.
Well,
So,
you know what's a fun just aside on this one? Everyone has a phone. Every store's got cameras in it.
I
There's
know
cameras. Everything's recorded. You know what we haven't gotten a recording of yet?
aliens
Aliens or ghosts.
or ghosts. Yeah, I knew that's where you're going with it.
But
Uh,
I think the other thing is, and
that's a good case for therapy going up. Don't we're again
yeah, like I
case
think
against therapy question mark.
I use like the term like the diasporatic nature of our social fabric, which is we have, and I blame social media for this because I blame social media for a lot of things, but we have fewer close relationships
Aha.
and many acquaintances or whatever is less than acquaintances, where we don't ever like, we may know a number of people, but we're not close to any of them. And so it's really hard, like when you need to just like have a talk with somebody, like like therapy is taking the place of those close friendships that used to exist.
So yeah, you are 100% correct that the close friendships, the person that you could share your most intimate thoughts or situations that you're in, those relationships are gone. I was listening to a podcast last night about how like 4 and 5 men or some crazy number say they don't have a best friend or close friends. Just this whole line of statistics basically saying showing you how much relationships have eroded, especially on the side of men, right?
Yeah.
That the traction underneath the feet of men has for being stoic and having some grounding has really and then they went on to talk about suicide statistics, things like that. Uh,
I mean, I remember this, and you were a part of this. Like about 8 years ago, I had a really bad week in Charleston. Not going to go into the reasons as to why I had a bad week.
that was that long ago?
Yeah,
Wow. All right.
but like the one night I went up to a friend's place on the other side of town and just spent a night at his place and just had a number of beers and watched Mad Max. And that helped a little bit, but like what helped more than anything else was me getting out of town, and you were kind enough to pick me up from the airport and like kind of put me up for a couple days. And I also went back up to Albany, but just like me getting out of town and spending time with people that I was close to, by the time my trip was up after 4 or 5 days and I came back to Charleston, I felt like I could face the world again. I wasn't thrilled, but I wasn't like in the low spot that I was, that like if you were to kind of just like objectively observe, be like, this is a case for someone to go to therapy. I didn't need therapy. I just needed to be able to remove myself from the situation and be around people that understood me and were close to me. And I was able to get through it. No therapy. But the therapy was being around people that know me and being away from the situation that was causing me distress.
let's take a break on that note. It's a rough note to take a break. I'm monitoring our time here, and I promised our first bar trivia, and I'm going to challenge you on this one for next week, along with our viewer and my mom. So our entire audience, you, our viewer, and my mom. She might be the viewer. Let me, if you know, so I'm going to ask you that you don't Google this, all right, because that's not fair to you. And really, it's not fair to me, but I have the answer. I don't really care.
Did you Google it?
I Googled the question. I guess I should probably. I have a whole list of questions for subsequent episodes. A lot of them I have not looked at the answers, and a bunch of them I know the answer already. So that's
All right,
cool.
fire away.
All right. What do these three words have in common? What makes them special? Polish, job, and herb. Don't answer it now. We're going to visit the answer. Next episode. The question is, what do these words have in common? Why are they special words? And the words are polish, job, and herb. You know the answer off the top of your head?
No, I'm thinking about it. I've got a couple ideas, but
I will give you one. Do you want a hint? It's not a giveaway.
I don't want a hint.
All right, plug your ears.
No.
I'm giving you a hint anyways, and you don't need it. It's not going to help you much. The hint is write them down. On that note, that's the question. What do these three words have in common? Polish, job, and herb. Let's
hold on. I want to bring up this point because we're talking like men expressing emotion and everything, and like this is me speaking from experience, but I bet that you probably feel similarly, which is like I can't think of a single time in my life when I've expressed a vulnerable emotion and immediately thought like this is going to be held against me at some point in the future.
Wait, you haven't thought that? So you've been emotional and then thought?
I can't think of a single time where I haven't thought that immediately afterwards.
Oh,
you follow me?
Well, that's
a male experience.
That's the issue with being very emotional. Is that you're showing your cards, you're showing people how you feel, and I would want to spend more time thinking and trying to problem solve than just emoting and displaying.
Right. So you're circling around my like a point that I make just before that in the list, which is like men view expressing emotion as just opening up avenues of weakness that others might be able to exploit in the future.
You're giving people ammunition to use against you.
Yep.
And at this point, societally, it could be held to use against you.
Depending,
I just want to hit some comments here. We got one here from Mike Pastilli saying, I thought it read, I got more essays in my building than people, but he said I have more ESAs. ESAs, emotional support animal, in my buildings. But we have seen in the real estate business, especially in New York City, a huge uprise in ESAs, emotional support animals. And it's just why they changed the laws recently that, and now you can't ask why someone has an ESA, which I think is reasonable. But again, it feels like
it's just a loophole.
It feels like the marijuana certificate. However, that even comes with stipulations. Just because you are legally able to smoke marijuana doesn't mean you can smoke it inside, right? Because other people have problems with it. If you can smell it inside the building, you're not allowed to smoke inside. So, all right, where are we?
I want to talk about this as well because I want to see what you think about this. But like, and I'm generalizing here from my own experience, but like in the video, the guy talks about how men view emotions fundamentally different from women. And like for men, emotions really exist as a call to action. An emotion is just saying, hey, you need to be doing something. And that something depends on the emotion.
There's
But like,
something wrong. There's something wrong here. I need to do something about it.
or there's something right here and I need to do something. But like emotions don't exist for themselves, for their own good. Emotions exist to signal to you, hey, do something. And I think women look at emotions as just like, oh, they're emotions. Whereas like men, I can't look at emotions that way. Like anytime I feel an emotion, I need to do something.
But we're not having a public dialogue around emotions right now, and how to manage them in any way, shape, or form. It's you go to a therapist, which I think the majority of therapists are crap. I have friends in therapy. I ask them about their therapy sessions. They're not getting advice. They're not going anywhere in therapy. I have one friend I'm pretty sure has just been lying to his therapist about every aspect of his life. And I have seen through that very clearly. I can't imagine his therapist has also not being.
Is this the person I'm thinking it would be?
I don't know. I don't want to call anybody out on this topic, but
I feel like I'm being vague enough.
well, there's a private chat option here, so I'll open that window.
Or we can talk about it off air.
So I just want to. I searched the top reasons why people go to therapy. I just want to hit this list real quick.
Okay.
Some of it makes a lot of sense. And again, I don't want to build a case entirely against therapy, but here are the reasons: addiction, anxiety and stress, confidence, self-esteem, support, depression, grief and loss, illnesses, phobias, relationship issues, wanting to better yourself in your life, feeling like you're overwhelmed, sexual issues, and reaching a specific goal in life. I will tell you, I don't know a single person who has ever been to therapy for phobias.
Oh, this is a good one. Because I could talk about this.
But addiction, anxiety, confidence, self-esteem, depression, loss. I don't know anybody who's going to therapy who wants to better themselves.
I think by definition, you're going to therapy to better yourself.
Well,
like I think that encompasses everything.
But you not from a neutral plane, from a negative place. You're going to better yourself.
Yeah, but
still, not from I'm okay. I'm going to go to therapy and make myself even better.
Yeah. All right. So the whole phobia thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't personally known anybody that's gone to therapy for phobias, but as I've talked about a number of times on this cast, like I have this paralyzing fear of spiders, and every once in a while somebody will be like, dude, this is really bad. You should go to therapy to deal with your arachnophobia. And my answer is no. because
you're stubborn.
Yeah. But also,
maybe you should go to therapy to deal with your stubbornness.
No.
The root of the problem here.
But the thing about it is, if I were to go to therapy for arachnophobia, you know what I would have to be around?
Spiders.
Fucking spiders. Like, I tell them, I'm just like, I know what the treatment for arachnophobia is. It's exposure therapy. And I view the cure as worse than the disease. I will live with this.
It would start as some talk therapy, some cognitive behavior therapy, and then maybe some light exposure, but maybe just to
they'd start with like pictures of spiders, and then like they'd have a spider in a room that you stand outside, then you stand inside the room with the spider.
Be very slow. Be a very slow process.
Yeah, and I'm saying I'm not doing that. Like I've learned to live with it. I've made it this far. Not going any further.
So, let me just hit some of the reasons why people don't go to therapy here, because these are good reasons.
Also, real quick, just about the stubbornness. There's one of my favorite acts of vandalism ever. There's a billboard from like the Department of Health or something, and it says, making up a year, in 2017, thousands of men will die from stubbornness. And somebody spray painted on it, "No, we won't." But it was about like men being too stubborn to get like routine health checkups about like colon cancer or other crap. But I'm just like, I identify with the vandal.
I'm starting to swing on that. I'm getting to an age where I can't push my body as hard, and actually having health insurance might make some sense. But here are some of the reasons why people don't go to therapy. Number one, speaking of health insurance, cost. In 2018, nearly 40% of people cited that the reason they didn't go to therapy was for cost.
Well, who can't afford $200 an hour?
Yeah, if you're lucky. Next up is time. 20% of people cited time was not the reason. And if you can't make time to go to the gym, by the way, you're gonna have a tough time finding time to go sit in therapy. By the way, we have not talked about exercise as a major cure-all, psychological, emotional, depression.
Exercise is fantastic in practically every way.
In almost everything, a little bit of exercise will bring you out of depression, or it's really, really good for you. It's brought me out of some tough places. Stigma, and again, I don't think we have much of a stigma against therapy these days.
There used to be. I think that's
we're helping
gone.
We're helping to build one. I'm just kidding.
Well,
and we're not against therapy.
We're gigantic hypocrites on this cast, because we're starting off saying, like, if you need to go to therapy, go to therapy. Okay, here's 40 minutes of why therapy sucks.
Next up is fear. Some people are afraid of therapy, and facing their fears and sharing their secrets. That would be you and Spiders.
For sure.
Other people cited therapy hours, the times that they were free didn't align with the times therapists were free. Other people cited therapist training, so they might not like how the therapist. And again, there are different modalities of therapy. And what the guy said in the video, that I'd like you to shout this guy out. Could you pull that up?
Give me a sec.
What he did say, though, was, here are some ways that you can speak to your therapist so that you maybe I'm on the wrong podcast. He may not have said this. This is a different cognitive behavioral therapist. But what he said was, what she said, and I will pull her name in just a minute, that you may need to meet with a couple of different therapists to find the one that is best for you. Any luck there?
Yeah, the YouTube channel is Healthy Gamer GG, and the guy is Dr. K.
Dr. K. Healthy Gamer what?
Healthy Gamer GG. And it's Healthy Gamer is an online community and resource platform for gamers and their families. I don't know. So I think this is like a video that's being hosted by him. I don't know. But yeah, the YouTube video is Why Therapy Sucks for Men.
You mentioned this doctor. This is Dr. Tali Sharat.
Okay.
American, British, Israeli neuroscientist. And she was the one that said you may need to visit several different therapists. And if you don't feel that it's working for you, that you maybe have that conversation with your therapist, and maybe even ask them for a different suggestion.
Let's hit this comment real quick.
A bad
from Sasha.
A bad therapist or not connect with their patients, so they'd be willing to give you a good recommendation.
Oh, actually, real quick, I want
no notes here.
Is this? I don't know if this is on your list or not.
Oh, shit.
But I wonder, how many people go to therapy, say they don't want to go to therapy because they question how much good it will do. And the reason why I mention this is, if you look at the comments on that YouTube video about why therapy sucks for men, almost every single comment is a person sharing a personal anecdote of a negative experience they had in therapy. My personal favorite was, I went to couples therapy with the girl that I was dating, and she was ready for marriage and I wasn't. And the therapist just says, well, then you should just get married. You can always get divorced. I didn't go back.
That was an example of a therapist actually giving advice, and maybe potentially lousy advice.
I don't think that's potentially lousy.
A lot of therapy. Well, an example of that happening, and in this example, that was that bad advice happening. But again, a lot of therapists don't want to actually give advice. They just want to create a platform for you to talk. let's see.
I mean, I could say personally. So also about 8 years ago, I like the girl that I was dating at the time was in therapy, and she asked me if I wanted to go to one of her therapy sessions. I was like, all right, fine, and went there, and we talked about some stuff, and literally nothing happened. Nothing changed whatsoever. Nothing changed for the positive.
I think you
And I
have.
was like, this was useless. Like, why did I even come? Why am I here?
It's like being hypnotized. You have to want. You have to
Well,
want it.
it's like I actually like said some things that and I brought up some points and like the therapist even agreed with me and like she didn't do shit about it.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of therapy. I spent a lot of time in therapy as a younger kid, a child of a deceased parent, and uh, a lot of it I just saw through and just thought this was just funny stuff. There were some good therapists, but the vast majority of them were just, they were trying to be helpful people, but it was just they weren't good at it.
Oh,
And
here's another point about like couples therapy, which that was brought up on the video, but I think is worth mentioning is like men going into couples therapy feel like they're just getting ganged up on and are outgunned.
well, because you have two people that are good at talking about feelings, that come equipped with ammunition, and they know. It's like when you tell me you want to play some type of board game or something with me, and I don't know. I've never played the game, so you give me a quick once over and then kick my ass 30 times in a row.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
just like, wow, you really suck at this board game.
because I don't have to fucking play. My sister does that. My sister loves bringing up games, and there's some of them can be fun, but they're games that she's familiar with. So then she introduces me to the game and then kicks my ass. Usually she goes easy for like the first round, and then 2 3 rounds in, she's just kicking my ass so much. I'm like, this isn't fun. But it also wouldn't be fun if she just went easy on me, and it wouldn't be productive.
Yeah, but that's how men feel when they're going to couples therapy. Is they feel like the therapist is going to be taking the chick's side, and they also just don't have the tools to navigate this space. Because even if the therapist is male, he's trained in like this kind of female centric environment, and so like the entire experience is a more female leaning thing, and so men going and be like, I this how am I going to get anything out of this when like I can't articulate anything, and when I do articulate something, it's fucking wrong.
And painful. You're digging because you're digging deep.
Yeah.
You're digging really deep, thinking you're in touch with the depths of your emotions, when realistically it's just a knife in a gunfight.
Yup.
All right. On that note,
Let's hit Sasha's comment about like
I
future
can't see
casts.
the comments by the reason.
You can't see the YouTube comments?
No, I can't.
Okay, so Sasha says, hey, can you guys do an episode on reproductive coercion? There's been an increase in reproductive coercion since Roe v. Wade being overturned, and most people who are not most people who are not in relationships with domestic violence are unaware their partner baby trapping them on purpose because there's no warning signs. So like the idea of like getting a chick pregnant so that she can't leave you. And now that like abortion has been severely restricted in a number of states, it's more and more difficult for these women to be able to have any kind of an out.
But that goes both ways. Also, women do that to men.
I wonder. It would be really difficult to measure. Like how often do women purposely get on pregnant to keep the man, and how many times do men try and get the woman pregnant to keep the woman? I wonder.
The issue is sourcing the data. It's not reported.
Well, yeah, it would be really difficult to get the data.
You'd have to do the sample size would have to be enormous, and
but also it's like, how would you conduct that study? Like feasibly, how would you measure?
Yeah, that's why it would be tough. That's an episode that we don't have much content on, but I would be interested in having that discussion.
Well, what we could do is we could make that part of a larger discussion of like, it's been a year and a half since Roe v. Wade was overturned. How deeply to shit have things gone in various places?
Let's have that conversation off air, and I'd like to analyze that stuff. But on that note, I want to thank you guys for joining us, enjoying some drinks with me and James. And I guess we will see you next time, the answer to the bar trivia, we will make sure that we have that on board for next time as well. Thank you guys for joining. James, you stay on for a minute. I will answer your burning question. Adios, everybody.
All right, that concludes this episode. What do you think? Do you agree with our case against therapy? Or are you still a fan, bar none, for all therapy? Let me know in the comments.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.